Hello，你好，Welcome back，欢迎回来to Wisdom Wednesday with Johnny Tiger. The date is August 19, 2020. As I come into contact with more and more Chinese people, Taiwanese people, Cantonese people, I see that especially the ones I run into here in North America, there's kind of a trend that a lot of them are not very friendly toward animals. They don't have experience as children to have pets. So this kind of perpetuates this idea, this stereotype that I hear white people and Caucasian and Canadians and Americans uh, pass around that Chinese people they eat a lot of animals. They like to eat dogs. They like to eat cats. And Chinese people don't like animals. Chinese people don't like pets. Now, I happen to be one of those fortunate people that all the times while I was growing up, I had all kind of pets. I had frogs, I had crickets, I had snails, I had silkworms, I had squirrels, I had eels, I had crayfish, I had crabs, I had hermit crab, I had one rooster, and of course dogs, cat, guinea pig, rabbit. I had a lot of pet turtles. Uh, when I was growing up, it's just uh, I constantly had one type of animal or another. So I count myself to be someone who is very close to animals, and in fact, I've always been able to work very good with animals, even aggressive ones. I'm very good with dogs. I'm very good with horses. I'm very good with most cats. Speaking of cats, this week I am all stressed out because my cat Tiger, whom you guys seen on videos sometime, he is very sick, and I've been trying really hard to raise enough money to pay for his vet bills and pay for his treatment. Uh, so that's what's been on my mind most of this week. So that is why I'm going to sit back and talk a little bit about the relationship between Chinese people and various type of pets and why we like or dislike a certain type of animal. Let's just talk about pets in general. A lot of people say, well, so many Chinese people don't have pets or they didn't have pets when they were growing up. So obviously Chinese people don't like animals, they don't like pets. They just like to eat them. There is a couple of reasons, a couple of big factors into why a lot of Chinese people, actually I can give you three reasons why pet is not as big a thing in Chinese culture as in other cultures. Although that is slowly changing. Nowadays, pet is becoming more and more popular in China and Taiwan. Reason number one, Chinese culture is a very money-oriented culture. In other words, happiness, contentment, a lot of those stuff are not what we were taught to value. So having an animal around the house that really doesn't benefit you in any way other than uh, eat your food and sleep in your space and you have to pay vet bills and so on and so on. It kind of clashes with the Chinese belief that if it costs money, then it's not necessary. We want to save money, we don't want to spend money. Um, like I said, it's because in Chinese culture is not very big on the mental well-being and stuff like that. So those of you who say, well, the pets they do things for you that make you happier. Yes, they do. They totally do. But in Chinese culture, they don't think that's very important. They think having money in your account will make you happier, which is totally not true. So that is one reason why a lot of time when a Chinese child go to his or her parents and say, "Can I have a puppy or can I have a kitten?" The parent immediately say no, because the parent is thinking, "Oh, it's going to cost $100 to buy a kitten, and we got to buy food. We got to buy we got to pay for medication. We got to pay for this or that, and all kind of cost, and it's going to be messy around the house, and we're going to have to spend extra time cleaning things up. And we all know, well, every Chinese person know, that time equals money. So you're already feeding this thing, you're already spending money on this thing, and now you have to clean up after it? No, of course not. We're not going to have any kind of thing around the house that's going to waste money. So that is reason number one, is that culturally, the Chinese people view money to be more important than a lot of things. Now, reason number two is modern Chinese history and the lack of resources. Pet, when we really come down to it, pet is a luxury. It is not something that you can easily afford. In fact, I'm feeling that even more this week. My cat is sick, and I don't even have the money uh, to pay for treatment. And I'm not even one of those people who spend everything. I usually set about $1,000 aside uh, as a backup plan, and even that is not enough to pay for my cat's treatment. So having pets, needing to take good care of them, is a luxury. A lot of modern Chinese people in the last 200 years have not had a lot of time to have luxury. Let's look at people in China. First, they got invaded by the British, and then they got invaded by pretty much any old country in the world, France, Germany. There were 8 nations that got together and invaded China. And then Japan invaded China. And then finally, when Japanese left, there was a civil war going on in China. And then in 1937, Japanese people invaded China again. And after they finally threw out the Japanese people in 1945, they got another civil war, and then the Cultural Revolution, and a lot of internal fightings and stuff. So people from China have spent the last 200 years in more or less a refugee status. They could barely have money to feed themselves. They lived in an immensely crowded country with very little space and a lot of suffering going on. So no one really had the luxury, the resources to keep pets. Now look at Taiwan. First got occupied by the Japanese, and then when the Japanese left, it got occupied by the Democrat Chinese, and then there was rebellions, and then martial law, and then a lot of rebuilding, and so on and so on. Again, in the last 100 years or so, Taiwan has been under constant duress, which means a lot of people, again, have barely had enough money to get by, so having pets was not a priority. This resulted in that only Chinese people that were comfortable and wealthy enough and uh, relaxed enough to have pets were the Cantonese people that were living in Hong Kong, that enjoyed relative easier lifestyle. Number three, lack of space. If you look at the Chinese population, And then you look at China and Taiwan and Hong Kong, you will realize that we are talking about a lot of people. Like that, it doesn't even convey it properly. When I went to China in 2007, it was very common that when you're walking down the street, you're rubbing shoulders with people. Like people just everywhere. So when you live in that very confined, very tightly packed environment, having enough space for yourself become problematic. So unless you're super rich and you can buy a lot of personal space for yourself, you most likely wouldn't have space for a cat or a dog or anything bigger than a goldfish. So those are the three reasons why the lifestyle of having pets uh, kind of got faded out in the Chinese culture, and it's just now slowly coming back in. By the way, the Mandarin word for pet is 宠物, 宠物, Chongwu, 宠物. 宠 means to spoil, to feed, to be nice to. Uh, wu means sing. So in a sense, if you do a direct translation, 宠物 means a thing that you spoil and nurture. Now, Chinese people have not always been quite so anti-pets. In fact, the Chinese people have had a long history of domesticating and liking and partnership with various types of animals. There are also a lot of superstition and different belief systems. And sometimes Chinese people will keep a pet not because they actually like it, but because they believe it will bring them good luck. For example, keeping a turtle is said to bring good luck to those who gamble a lot. So you will see a lot of gamblers, they'll keep a turtle at home, not because they like turtles, but they'll do it because they believe that any little bit helps. Fish is another thing. In Chinese culture, fish is called 鱼, 鱼, like say the word 须, but without the sh sound. 鱼, that's fish. Chinese people believe that having a fish tank in your living room in your house will give you very good fortune. Fish is often associated with well-being and health and longevity. So having fish as pets is very, very popular. Like when I was little, growing up in Taiwan, almost every household I've gone to had a tank of fish. Some had expensive fish, some had cheap fish, but almost every household had a tank of fish. But if you ask them if these were pets, they would tell you, no, no, these are not pets, they're just fish. They're here for the good fortune. They're here to bring good fortune to the house. So they don't necessarily love them like how we would love pets. They have them there for a very specific purpose. When it comes to cats and dogs, Chinese people believe that dogs will bring wealth and cats will drive you into poverty. Why is that? It's actually a very simple logic. In the old days, when there's no dog food, uh, people usually feed their dogs whatever's left from their dinner table. So, in a society where food was not always plentiful, having extra food left over so you can feed your dog, that made you appear to be more wealthy. So, gradually, only the rich people had dogs. So, people started believing that it's the dogs that were making these people wealthy. The Mandarin word for dog is go, G-O, G-O, go, like go, go, go. Cat, on the other hand, was said to bring poverty because cat ate things like mice and rats and other pests. And it was believed that uh, places that had a lot of cats obviously had a lot of these pests. And where can you find a lot of pests? In poor neighborhood, in the slum. So people believe that if you have cats in your house, that means the cat is going to make you poor, so they can have all these rats and mice to eat. Also, cats like to eat fish, and as I said, Chinese people believe fish were good luck, so eating fish was kind of a no-no, especially when cats would do it. For some reason, it was okay for people to eat fish, but when cats did it, they would judge them on that. So cats was no good. Uh, Dog were good. The Mandarin word for cat was Mao, M-A-O, Mao. Quite interestingly, Chinese people had always loved keeping birds as pets. The more vocal the bird, the more they were loved. A lot of people had bird singing competition, where people from all over the city would gather at a park, and they would bring their bird cages with their bird inside. It could be parrots or parakeets or pigeons or uh, 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 nightingales, owls, any kind of bird, and people would bring them to the park, and there would be a panel of judges, and they would decide which person owned the bird that sounded the best. And this tradition went back for 2,000 years and still goes on today. A lot of really rich Chinese people, people in Shanghai, people in Beijing, they will keep very expensive birds, and they'll carry the birds in a cage. They'll carry them around every day, and almost like how you see people carry their dogs around every day. These people they'll lug a bird cage around with them every day, so they can enjoy the song of the bird song whenever they want. The Mandarin word for bird is niao, Niao, N-E-O, Niao. Another interesting pet the Chinese people had always been into were bugs, but not any kind of bugs. They were into crickets. They were into cactus, and they were into grasshoppers, and they were into cicadas. Basically, any kind of bug that would make sound in the summertime, in the evening. They were very highly demanded. In fact, in the Ming Dynasty and the Qing Dynasty, a highly valued cricket, a cricket of good breed, could go for several gold pieces. It was super expensive to get a high quality cricket or cicada. And people, even now in China, especially in China, would trade these bugs for really high prices, and they would take them home and feed them and keep them alive, and just so they can listen to the noise they make uh, when they do their meditation or when they take a nap. These bugs are said to be very, very therapeutic. And of course, there were the cricket fight. People like to gamble, and they would bet on whose cricket would be the ultimate winner. Uh, you can say that while other cultures were getting into boxing and UFC and wrestling matches and stuff like that, Chinese people made their animals perform those functions. like roosters and dogs and crickets, and sometimes even fish. A lot of people say bad things about pigs, but you should know, uh, or I'll tell you that pigs were the first animal Chinese people ever domesticated. And in fact, before Chinese people started worshipping dragons as a totem, the first animal Chinese people worshipped was a pig. Pigs were in every Bible, every temple, every worship place of worship until they were replaced by the imaginary dragon. You can see the influence of pig in even how the Chinese words were designed. The Chinese word for home, which is jia, 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 home, is written as a combination of two words. It's on the top of the character for home is a word for roof, and on the bottom is a word for pig. So people way back then believed that if you have a pig and a roof over your head, then you got yourself a home. Chicken were of course highly valued, and we talked about that already. People used to believe, or people would say that chickens were organic bank because you could actually use eggs in places of money to trade for goods, and that worked all throughout Chinese culture. So having a couple of chicken in your yard was very, very, very popular in Chinese culture. uh, you don't really need to feed them anything special, and they can look for food themselves. They'll keep the insects away, they'll keep the bugs away, and also, if you have some egg laying hen, then they'll take care of your food for you. Like, even if you don't have any more money to buy rice or whatever, you can still get eggs every day. You can live on that for a little while. So chicken was highly valued in Chinese culture as both a farm animal and as pets. Perhaps the animal that got the highest prestige in Chinese culture was the horses. It was said that a hero was judged not by his armor, not by his sword, but by what horse he had and his how much attention he would pay to that animal. One of the greatest Chinese warrior in the entire Chinese history, the warrior Liu Bu from the Three Kingdoms period. Uh, he was one of the greatest warrior, not because of his martial art, not because of his armor, not because of his military tactic, even though he was great in all those areas. But Lu Bu was almost never defeated in battle because he had the best horse uh, anyone ever had. It was said that his horse was so fast and so strong that before the other military generals, before his opponent could turn and run away, he was already behind them. It's almost like uh, it's like the horse was so fast that this warrior could teleport. Uh, Obviously, that was a bit exaggerated, but it shows us how important horses were to a culture, a race of people that spent 5,000 years uh, fighting each other and trying to dominate each other and trying to prove themselves to be superior in the one of the biggest piece of land in the Asian continent. Last but not least, cow or cattle. A lot of people asked me this one before. Why do Chinese Buddhists why don't they eat beef? Why is it okay for them to eat pork and chicken and fish? Why is it not okay for them to eat beef? A lot of people I've asked this question gave me some crazy answer about because Buddhism came from Hinduism and Hindus thought cows were sacred. That's why we don't eat them. After extensive research, I am prepared to offer you a much more logical reason why Chinese people, especially Chinese Buddhists, but a lot of Chinese people in general, didn't eat beef. There were three reasons. Number one cow or one ox or one cattle could do the work of 5 men when it came to plowing the field, when it came to pulling heavy cart. So in a society where people mostly relied on farming and growing crop, having these animals as heavy duty machineries, as heavy labors, uh, was much more important than to eat them. After all, you already have a lot of other meat. You can eat chicken, you can eat horses, you can eat pigs. Uh, Chinese people didn't really eat horses, by the way. The only instances where they would do that was in case of extreme starvation and when there's no other choices. Like I said, horses were very, very valuable, especially if you had a good horse. It was worth uh, the equivalent of several buildings, several houses. Like if you sell a really good horse, you can buy yourself 2 or 3 houses, no problem. But back to beef. Because there were so many other meat choices, the idea of butchering a really strong working animal for its meat was ridiculous to the Chinese people. It's the the beef the beef was more useful if it was alive than dead. Reason number two: appreciation and gratitude. A lot of Chinese people grew up on milk from cow. So to them, because they had survived on cow's milk when they were baby. So to them, the cow is almost like a surrogate mother. The, you just don't go out of your way to eat your surrogate mother. So that is another reason why Chinese people didn't want to eat beef. It's too weird. It's like you're eating your mom. Third is again we go back to the limitation of space. If you just need a cow or an ox to plow your field, you can actually get away with just having 2 or 3 of them. Some people would have 5, at the most maybe 10, and they can get a lot of work done. You don't need any more than that. But if you started raising them for beef, it took a massive amount of uh, territory to feed them. It took a lot of space to keep them. It took a lot of work. It took a lot of resources just to keep these things for meat. And there again, there were so many much easier meat sources like pigs and chicken where you don't really need that much space to keep chicken. So the idea of raising a lot of cow or beef cattle for their meat and wasting a whole lot of space and having to waste a lot of grass and feeds and stuff like that was not economical and not realistic. for the lifestyle that Chinese people enjoy. So for many Chinese people, many Chinese family, they would have one ox and one milk cow, and they would treat these animals like uh, workers and their favorite household pets. Another favorite pets of Chinese people, especially in the old days, were donkeys. Horses were expensive. Only noblemen, only soldiers and military generals would be able to own horses. So for the civilians, donkeys were just about as good. They could do most of the work that a horse could, and they were very, very cheap to come by. Thank you for checking out this week's Wisdom Wednesday. Please spare Tiger some positive thoughts. Keep him in your prayer. And if you feel like donating to help keeping the little guy alive, please send e-transfer or PayPal donation to Johnny Tiger at shaw.ca. That's JOHNNYTIGER at SHAW.ca. Thank you in advance, and we'll be back again tomorrow for Toy Thursday. For now, have a good night.